let's go on to something more controversial. You know, social media influencers and YouTubers having fights. What do you think of
that? I've seen a couple of them, and it's a real shame, really, because when you look at the professional scene and you think, I've seen some fantastic kids that can't cash a break that end up becoming journeymen because they can't sell tickets.
Let's say Eddie Hearn watches this. What advice are we going to give Eddie? So I'm going to welcome everyone to the Windmill Boxing Club for another series of the Punchline podcast. We've got a new guest today, Shiney, who's an England boxing coach and also a local boxing coach in a local club in the West Midlands. So we're going to go straight into it and bring you on for an introduction about yourself.
Brilliant. Thanks for having me on, Mo. Shiney, I've coached for a couple of years now. Started off at Plec Amateur Boxing Club, coaching there. Also took on Coventry University Boxing Club, which I've been head coach at now for 5 years. So that's pretty much where I started, working with the seniors at Plec and then taking on the university. Since then, 2 years ago, I got taken on by England Boxing. So went through an application process with them and got took on as a talent pathway coach. So I've had some great experiences with them over the last 2 years. And last year, locally, I decided to go for the regional coach position as well. So I've had a year, well, not a full year, but last season was the first season that I was working as the Midlands regional coach as well.
So at the beginning, where did it start? What club did you start at? How did it start? What was your interest coming to join boxing?
So I started as a kid, 14, I think. I went to Plec Amateur Boxing Club in Warsaw, at the back of town. Started there, fell in love with it straight away. Really enjoyed it, sparring, things like that. I had my first bout 6 months in. I think I had around 10 or 11 there. And then I decided to move to Lions ABC under Bob Dylan, which was probably where I really flourished and understood about technical, tactical stuff. Bob was in the prime of the GB stuff, so he was going away quite often to different countries, bringing back loads of stuff. So I think I absorbed a lot there. And then decided to go to university, which is kind of where it all separated. So I wanted to go to university and continue boxing. But the university setup just wasn't very, very good. I think had only just started. This is 7-8 years ago, where the stereotype was that university boxing is poor. And it pretty much was. So I'd gone there coming off the back of Bob's. I'd boxed before. So it didn't quite. I went to a gym there, Coventry University, but it wasn't very experienced at the time. I just struggled to get back into things. Whilst I was at university, I started helping out with the club there, coaching, just in an assistant coach's role, really. I didn't have any badges or anything, but I enjoyed it. And then the head coach there left and packed in. And then that's when I kind of thought, you know what, I'd like to take a challenge on here and start working with the university. University trusted me enough, so they took me on as head coach at Coventry University. I finished my degree and I was still working up there as a building surveyor. So I decided to take the university on at the same time. That's pretty much where it started and kind of where it is now. So I've continued to work with that university ever since I took it on 5 years ago. And because I live in Warsaw but work in Coventry, I'd spent a couple of nights finishing work and going straight to the gym in Cov. And then a couple of nights I finish work, drive home, and then I coach at the gym in Warsaw. So that's kind of how I balance things at the moment, and that's how it's stayed up until now. So
when you talk about uni, what did you study at uni?
Building surveying. Okay. So that was the degree I chose. I had no real interest in it. It wasn't anything that I thought, I want to be a building surveyor when I'm older. I was kind of lost. My cousin that I was with was extremely clever at the time, and he was going to study dentistry. My other one was studying aerospace engineering, and I was kind of lost. So all in all, I won't forget, I went on Google and I thought, what degree gives you a good chance of getting a job at the end of it? And building surveying was pretty high up there. So I chose building surveying just purely on the back of there's a good chance I can get a good job when I finish, and luckily that's how it ended off.
Fair dues. You mentioned Bob Dylan. Obviously, I qualified in 2005 on the old system, and that was an assistant coach. And Bob was my tutor on that course, and Alan and Nick from Leicester. And there was one more. I can't remember who the other one was, but I think he no longer is part of boxing. But it goes to the old Hamworth gym. I don't know if you've seen.
No, it was bizarre for me because I got my level 1 course, and then I was allowed to be head coach at the university club, but only for 1 year because you have to have a level 2 to run a club. So when I had to sit my level 2 within a year, and then Nick Griffin was the assessor, and he knew I'd run my own club, so he was a lot harder on me. He said, everyone else here is an assistant in a club that's looking to get their level 2. I'm aware you run your own club, so there's a lot of risk with you. And he was really thorough, but it was good. I passed it, which was good. I just went through a big assessment weekend with England I got picked for my level 3. So I'm on the level 3 course now. I've waited 3 years, I think, to do my level 3, but then there just hasn't been one. And then this year, March sort of time, they went through a huge, you had to put an application in first, and I think they picked 40 coaches to then do a weekend in Sheffield assessment. And then they picked 16 coaches out of the 40. And I was lucky enough, the only coach from the Midlands that got picked. But so I'm on the level 3 program now as well, which is good. So that allows me to take that next step internationally.
You know, you talked about the level 3, the application. Talk us through the application. What was it like? What did you have to do? I think a lot of us coaches, we kind of shy away from doing applications because of the technology involved and the structure. I believe the video message was recorded or something.
So you had to do a video. So I had to do a video call for my UK sport application, actually. So there's 2 that I got picked for at the same time. So the first one was a level 3, which was some questions that you had to answer and you had to send in an application form. And then they went through a number of applicants and then decided which 40 they wanted to take. There were some general questions about what you've coached, who you've coached, what level you've coached at, how long you've coached. So I filled all that through. And then there was a weekend, Saturday, Sunday in Sheffield Institute of Sport. And they took all the coaches with 4 coach educators, 3 assessors, all up there. So you get up Sheffield, you get an hour slot, 15 minutes on each station, and they just hit you with some questions. You don't know what it is. So you're just up there waiting, you get your time. The first 15 minutes was an actual interview. So I sat with, I think, Hilary Lissenden, who's quite well-recognised refereeing judge in London. And there was their GB performance coach, manager. So he was there and he was leading the interview, and there was another gentleman there, I couldn't remember his name. So it was just all about teasing sort of questions, what you've done, does it work? Why do you think it works? Real like questions that made you think, do you think that's right? Is that true? And it kind of makes you question yourself almost. So that was quite difficult. I know a couple of people. Put you on the spot. Yeah, everything was on the spot kind of go. So you'd answer a question, what makes you a good coach? And then they'd throw something back to make you kind of go a little off edge. And then you had to be sure about what it was you're saying. They wanted you to question yourself almost. So that was difficult, but I quite enjoyed it. I was lucky enough to, probably taking it one step back, I was interviewed before one of the lead assistant coach roles with England. So I think there was about 6 coaches that were picked across the country, and they were taking 2 on. And I was lucky enough to be one of the 6 that was interviewed. This was a year into coaching for England, so it was massive for me. I was with coaches like Ivan Cobb, heavily experienced coach, Quinton Shillingford, another real good...
Q from Portsmouth.
Q from Portsmouth. So who else was there? John Warburton from Liverpool. I'm talking some very experienced heads.
John recently secured a role for the Commonwealth?
I'm not too sure.
Okay.
But there were some very experienced coaches there, and I was thinking, wow. And I went up there, and it was similar to what I had this time, but for the first time, and I kind of crumbled a little because I saw the faces around me. We had a half an hour paper assessment, and I would have, in any other environment, I would have been fine, but I was sat next to 5 other extremely experienced coaches, and I kind of thought, you know, should I be here? So that was difficult, and I didn't get the position. Rightfully, Q and John Warburton got the positions, but that's set me in real good stead for this second time round. So I knew that there's 15 other people taking this for the first time, and for me, I'd experienced this once before. So Ivan said to me at the end when I didn't get it that job the first time, he said, experience can't be brought. It's very undervalued these days. And I think he was true, because the second time, this time round, I felt so at ease with everything. Nothing threw me off. I knew it was going to be tough. I knew what to expect. I knew how to stay calm. So once I'd done the interview, the second stage was, I think I had a 10-year-old schoolboy, and I was asked to do development pads with him. Never met him before. And I had a coach there, one of the official coach educators for England. He was assessing me. I had to do 15-minute pads with a kid I've never met before. And can you do developmental pads with somebody? So, you know, I'd geared it all around getting to know the kid, asking him. There's this ethos around, as coaches, I think we try and tell kids what to do, or boxers what to do as the coach. But the England philosophy is very much more around giving them independence and letting them kind of tell you, and then your role is to kind of lead and nurture that. But to do that with a 10-year-old, I think he had 3 bouts, so it was tough. But I'd got through that 15 minutes, spoke to him, something I'd done before. So that was good, but I can see how it can throw a lot of people off. Then I had another one where you pick a card. There was just envelopes, and all of the envelopes had scenarios in there that you had to teach a group of kids, and they're all novices. When I did this for the England job, I had the European team. I had girls like Simran Kaur, Gemma Richardson, Royston Barney-Smith. I'm talking European medalists, world champions.
The best in Europe, yeah.
So it was great to work with them, but then trying to deliver it with 10, 12, 15-year-olds that had 1, 2, 3 bouts, that was difficult. So that was challenging, and I ended up drawing something terrible, like teach the boxers. I had 15 minutes to teach them the difference between drawing and countering. Now, experienced kids, elite kids, you'd probably teach how to draw and how to counter. Trying to teach 12, 13-year-olds that had a couple of bouts, the difference between drawing and countering was difficult. And I remember I was 1 from last, and when I finished that, it went okay. I asked, what was the other one? And it was something like front foot boxing or something, how to be offensive proper. And I thought, out of all of them, I got the toughest one there. So that was tough. That was difficult. And I think our last one was performance pads. So imagine you're going into a bout at a major tournament and you get given a style of opponent. The last one I had, the last time I went for a position with England, was a right-handed counter-punching aggressive southpaw. And I was given the sheet and said, 15 minutes, away you go. Teach this kid how you could beat a right-handed southpaw that's a counter-puncher, but he's aggressive. And it was sort of like, which one do you work with? He does everything. You say he's a southpaw, but he's right-handed, so, you know, that nullifies the southpaw element that we talk about. You say he's a counter-puncher, but you also said he's an aggressive counter-puncher, so, you know, do you wait? But he's aggressive, he's going to take the space. So there were some real difficult ones out there. But luckily, I'd been through it once already. So when I went for this level 3, I knew what to set myself up for. So, and I think I got something really simple anyway. Short, aggressive, come forward boxer. So I was lucky in that regard in terms of getting somebody ready for like angles, little adjustments, not giving too much ground, that sort of thing. So all in all, it went really well, to be honest. And I was successful, which was great. So kind of haven't really started it too much yet because of the whole pandemic, but really looking forward to the level 3 because a lot of people are saying that's the one that they've from experience learnt the most from, trying to bridge that gap with that international, the next stage of amateur boxing. So I've got that. And then, as I said, I was lucky enough to be put forward by England for the UK Sport Performance or the UK Coaching Performance Foundation. So that was a 10-minute interview. So I had to do a 10-minute video on a couple of questions that they gave, send it into UK Sport. And I didn't think I'd get anywhere. I didn't think I'd actually get anywhere with it, because I think Amanda Coulson's been on it, Mick Driscoll's been on it. So it's only really some of your leading coaches in the country. So there was a gentleman that was England director at the time, and he saw me as somebody that to work towards the future with, and he asked me to go forward for it, and I said yeah, no problem. But I ended up being the only person, so I was accepted, the only coach from boxing that was put on that course. It's an 18-month course, and similar to the level 3, I've got a UK sport coach educator. So not anyone that's specific with boxing, but just an all-round educator about coaching itself. And it's been fantastic. We do Zoom sessions. We've done a personal development plan. We did a spotlight tool thing, which was a computer software where it asks you loads of different questions, and then how you answer them kind of tells them a little bit about the way you coach or the kind of person that you are. So it highlights little areas.
Like your strengths.
Exactly, strengths and weaknesses and areas I need to be aware of. So I think it's fantastic. I'm learning so much from that, and meeting with somebody that's not boxing related but can help with how you come across, your attitude, how you speak to people, your mannerisms, everything that people kind of take for granted a little. And we've had some fantastic Zoom sessions with Olympic swimmers and other real, we had somebody from the Football Association working with the Premier League, and some of the people we've had on. Yeah. So that's been fantastic. And I'm with other coaches. I've got athletics coaches, basketball coaches, and other top sports. So it's great kind of being in that environment, and I'm learning so much at the moment. You kind of realize that, you know, at one point I thought, I'm a good coach. And so you kind of walk into a room with other people, and you kind of realize that you never stop knowing enough. There's so much more out there. And even when you become experienced in your own sport, what other people do in other sports can also be transferable. So
I think the key point is, like, there's loads of good coaches in our sport, but a good coach can be a bad coach on a different day. Like, we always make mistakes, so be open to be making mistakes, and that continuous development, which seems like what you're doing right now. You're branching across not just boxing but other sports, networking with different people and going outside the comfort zone.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, I'm really open to learning now. My eyes have been open since being on the England setup about how much there is to know. And I think every opportunity that I get is one that sometimes maybe I would have shied away from. But now I'm sort of like, I want to try and get out of that comfort zone, and I want to try and push and learn as much as I can learn from anyone and everyone. Because, you know, in terms of coaching, time's kind of on my side. I'm still relatively young, so I've got years that I want to give to the sport, and I want to pick up as much as I can very early on to help me through the next 10, 15, 20 years.
You know, on the back of the envelopes that you open and you have the random scenario, I'm just going to throw you a random scenario now. There's a young person, let's say age 17, wants to start coaching boxing. What's your advice to him?
Depends. I think there's some questions around, do people want to coach and box at the same time? So does he box? Because if he was to box, could he actually give his time boxing and coaching? Because there was a time when everyone kept saying to me, you're far too young to coach, you want to be boxing. And I used to think, I'd like to give it another go. But then I think, imagine building this coach profile and then getting into the ring and boxing and not performing too well, and then losing all that credential that you may have built as a coach. That respect you've built as a coach is almost gone, because like, how much does he know? Because didn't such and such just beat him and he's just a boxer? So I think that's a difficult one at the moment, depending on what type of coaching you want to do. I know even Heritage from Worley's a coach, and he's only a young kid, and I think he's loving it as a level 1 coach. And I think it's great for anyone to learn the other side of the ropes, really, because it's like, you know, I think it's important you get in and experience it firsthand, exactly what boxing is, because talking about getting punched in the face is completely different about getting punched in the face by somebody for real.
Theory and practical.
Exactly. So my advice would be, for anyone that sort of age, it'd be fantastic, but I wouldn't be putting too much pressure on yourself to actually be coaching. I think being around experienced coaches is a massive plus. Being in that environment is great. Being in the corner, as an assistant possibly is a fantastic tool for if you eventually want to go on and run a club or play a larger role in a club. It's definitely the right way to start. I was 24 coaching, and everyone was kind of like, what's he doing? But now I'm 30, and I feel like I've learnt so much over those 6 years. It's, the next 10 years kind of excite me really. So somebody 17 has the world at their feet really.
Let's go on to something more controversial. Social media influencers and YouTubers having fights. What do you think of
that? I've seen a couple of them, and it's a real shame really, because when you look at the professional scene and you think, I've seen some fantastic kids that can't catch a break that end up becoming journeymen because they can't sell tickets. So no promoter wants to work with them. So they think, I'd rather just earn $1,000, $2,000 a week fighting prospects, knowing full well that if they wanted to, they could go through the gears. To then see people like, I don't even watch YouTubers. I didn't even know who these people were, but I knew there was kids in my gym that were raving about it. They were coming up to me saying, yo, who's winning this KSI or Paul Logan? And I didn't know who these people were. And I think that's a real shame, where you got people like, I think, Dazan and Eddie that are putting huge shows on for people that have never laced a glove up before. And you've got some real talented athletes that can't catch a break because they're not
ticket sellers.
And I think that's the horrible part of our sport, where we lose kids that we shouldn't be losing because promoters aren't backing them, because they're backing some YouTuber that gets 1 million views.
Let's say Eddie Hearn watches this. What advice are we going to give Eddie?
Eddie needs to look at a local level, because I think there's some fantastic kids out there. There's some fantastic prospects. And I know Eddie's big on, kids that have come through the GB setup, and that's fantastic. But you got to look at, we had a kid that boxed Ben Whitaker a couple of times in the youths. You're never going to get a look in if you're boxing Ben at a regional level on a Midlands quarterfinal in Birmingham somewhere, and Ben goes on to win everything. But no one knows who you are. And who knows that if you didn't box Ben when you did, that you couldn't make the final and box Ben in a final and be that other kid. And I think that's a real horrible part of the sport. But over the last couple of years, I know that England have identified that as an issue, because you can get those sort of kids that are special. They come through your region, you lose to them every year, you have no luck, but you could beat 10 other kids. So they do talent assessment days now. You have to meet a certain criteria, otherwise every single kid in the country would be going. But we have a look at that pool of talent to kind of identify kids that may have been missed at a national stage because they boxed somebody that was the eventual winner in a regional round. And I think that's really good. And then that still allows them a platform to get onto England. And then from there, hopefully a platform to then be a bigger draw for somebody like an Eddie or a Frank eventually. I know there's a couple of kids, I think, was it Akash Dakor? Akash come off the radar completely and then went on to win a European gold. And I think kids like that are ones that have benefited through it. So I think that's positive, and there's more England coaches now at national semis and finals that are sat watching kids at a semi and a final to make sure that they don't miss anyone. So that talent identification's definitely grown. So there's more opportunities to box on a national stage or international stage. And that in turn helps for when you're trying to sell to a big promoter. You haven't lost that opportunity because you lost to GB number one at a local level for several years.
From a personal experience, what is your most standout coaching experience? Without naming anybody or a location or particular tournament or anything, what's your standout experience so far? Because there's going to be many more to come.
Yeah. I'd probably say that there's two. I was lucky enough to be able to help with the Youth Olympic Games prep, which was phenomenal for me. The kids there, they went on to win 3 golds and a bronze, 4 boxers. representing Great Britain at the Youth Olympic Games. Some fantastic names, and being in and around those kids and working with them was a fantastic experience. From an England side of things, but probably more locally at club level was last year. We went to Haringey and got best boxer of the best senior male at Haringey and beat ABA champion, Tri-Nation gold medalist, beat CYP champion all in one weekend was fantastic. And that was the icing on the cake for me in terms of I took the university on to change the stereotype around university boxers are no good. University boxers don't box with normal amateur boxers. We took kids to a platform like we've been to Ukraine and won team of the tournament out in Ukraine. We've been to Italy and boxed European champions. And then we've gone to Haringey with a Coventry University team. And 5 years ago, that would have been laughed at. But you've got a boxer now that's on that scroll that no one can take away with names like Joshua and Taylor and Nicola Adams. And you think some of the names on that list are phenomenal. And you've got a kid that's on there from a university boxing club, and that can never be taken away. And I think that's a big journey to kind of get there. And you've got to have the right kids, you've got to have the right people at the right time, and you've got to have that connection and that trust built, and that doesn't come overnight. But last year was special in that regard to have somebody on one of the biggest box cup in Europe and to walk away with the most prestigious award there. I think that was definitely one of the biggest highlights we've had.
And your aim to change the stereotype from university boxing, you think you achieved that through that?
100%. We've had university national champion with numerous university champions at the university championships, but I don't judge success isn't something that should be judged on performance anyway. But I think we've got a boxer that's on England, which is fantastic to have a university boxer on England. That's great. We've had a university boxer, win golds at Haringey, best boxer at Haringey. We've had boxers ranked top 10 in the country as seniors in their weight categories. And to see those university names on there is fantastic. And, ABAs and stuff like that, I think it's important that we've kind of shown and built a reputation that we'll happily box, your best clubs in London, and we'll happily box the strongest clubs in the Midlands and etc. And are more than capable of winning those things. And I think that shows a sort of strength and progression that the clubs had over the years. And I think from where we were to where we are now, I don't think people would look at university clubs used to be like, you could box anyone. If you said you were from a university, I don't think you had to even say what weight you were or what your record was. It was like, yeah, we'll take that bout. But now all of a sudden people kind of look twice and think, oh, he's a good kid. He's at that university sort of thing. And I think it's fantastic that we've kind of got that. And there's been some great kids that have come through a university setup.
I think it makes you a better athlete. If your mind has some sort of training, whether it's to do with boxing or not, it just teaches you to engage different approaches, try different things, listen to other opinions, and overall that affects your mental health. If you're wise, you're normally a little bit healthier mentally. And that obviously, for me, I believe it affects you physically.
England have got that DICE program now as well, which is fantastic for under 18-year-olds before they go to university.
It's the college scholarship for boxing.
Yeah. And I think that's fantastic. So you're seeing performance centres around the country that are allowing high-performing athletes that might not go to a normal college be able to continue and develop in their boxing and pick up A-levels at the same time. So I think it's really starting to change now, and it's good that we're supporting athletes in more than just the sport.
Right now, obviously, a lot of gyms are not functioning to max capacity or not functioning at all or struggling. What advice would you give to the athletes or the members of them clubs, whatever level they're at, if they're at like an introductory level, like a grassroots level, or they're a novice, or they're what we would traditionally call intermediate on that step towards greatness, or if they're at the top level? Obviously, top level have the facilities going at the moment, so we can exclude them from this discussion. But someone on a grassroots level, what advice as a coach would you give them to continue being interested and active training, maintaining weight, mental health, being part of the club, even though you're not in the physical environment of the gym?
IT is fantastic now, and we're in a world where there's so much software and things available. I mean, when we started lockdown, that university boxing club, I had boxers in Canada, Romania, here, there and everywhere. And I'd set up Zoom sessions, weekly Zoom sessions with my athletes, where 15 athletes would come on from local to London to other countries, and we'd all meet and we'd do a Zoom session in everybody's house. We'd go through themes and that sort of thing. We'd talk through scenarios, opponents, game plans. There's so much more than, as I said, physically having to be in a gym and punch a bag that you can do to help you develop. Watching bouts. And I say to so many people, I had a kid and he was watching loads of professional boxing. I said, have you watched WSB? I said, nah, not. And I says, well, have a little flick on WSB and watch some of the best performing amateurs out there over 5 rounds, and you can learn so much. Peter McGrail's bout with Shakur Stevenson, phenomenal. Those sort of bouts are bouts that we want to be looking at. And you can learn so much about the tactical movements, the shape, the game plan. Sometimes I used to watch WSB and think, I used to listen to the cornermen. They were fantastic. Lee Pullen, listening to what he's saying in between rounds, after that first round or the second round's finished, what he thought the boxers should be doing, how calm he was, all those sort of things I think help a boxer as well. Watch about, how do you think the first round went? We see 100 times, I won that bout, I got robbed. But did you get robbed? Is there things that you could have done better? Could the judges have saw it in a different way? What were the judges looking for? Do you know what they're looking for? Do we teach what they're looking for? Those sort of things I think are things that we can do and we have the opportunity to do right now, which doesn't need the use of a gym or a bag to help our boxers learn more about the other side, more about the sport.
Generally, in our conversation here in our podcast, it's tradition for the guest to wrap up with final words of advice or inspirational quotes or anything you want to share. Any shout outs?
Obviously, just like to say thank you for obviously having me on. It was fantastic, great chat, great conversation. In terms of anyone listening, there's loads of support platforms out there. I think it's important that we look at the mental health side of things. Everyone's gone through some difficult times during this lockdown period. It hasn't been easy for anyone, even myself included, I'll admit that. And I think it's important that, people speak about those sort of things. It's very important not to hold that stuff up. We've got that box gathering page, which I think is fantastic. And I think if any coaches want to get onto that, then feel free. Any boxers that need any advice, there's loads of people there to help. If anyone's got any questions, feel free. Everyone's here to help each other, and I think that's important. We're not in it for ourselves. We're here to help any individual that needs that help, and that's important for us as coaches. That's our duty. So, yeah, I think that's me done.